Hi everybody, I'm Amy, this is my wife Maggie, and
Hello.
together we are ThinkerThemer, and welcome back to our second installment of our most anticipated games of 2024. We've split it into two lists, so we have our original list, which is the new games. This list is a whole list of games that are getting a glow up, or there's a big box, there's an expansion,
second edition,
fourth edition, spoiler alert. So there's lots of variety in here, but essentially it's taking something that we already probably know that we love and adding to it.
A lot of times, I feel like in most, if not all cases, it's things that we've played the earlier version in some way, or actually no, that's not true. I think there might be some where it works this way. Anyways, these are going to be not brand new games, just new versions of these games.
Or ways to enjoy them in different ways. I would say that we don't generally play many expansions anymore because if you watch the channel, you'll know we get through a lot of games, so we're constantly in this moving forward. We have our classic games that we love, but generally speaking, we don't get back to expansion. So it might be a little bit different to other people's lists because there's a lot of more classic games in there. But also there were a few that didn't make our list, and we just want to talk about those briefly because they're probably going to be some big titles of the year.
So the first one is actually Planet Unknown, Supermoon. So Planet Unknown is that wonderful sort of polyomino tile laying game that is very, I love that it's so accessible, and the biggest selling point of it is the lazy Susan in the middle that distributes all the pieces around, or that kind of shows you, where can you grab pieces from. This new expansion brings in Supermoon, which is actually like an addition to your main player board. So now you have the option of putting things either on the main kind of planet or on this separate little board, and it expands, so the game actually extends for a few more rounds, like 5 rounds. So it actually, you now kind of have to pivot your strategy. If you're like, I've got this, I've nailed this, I know exactly, how much time I have to do things. And then it also introduces other things like, there's like this satellite that can kind of help destroy asteroids, and then you have these other kind of tiles that you can draw from instead of sort of choosing from the main thing. So you can, it gives you a few strategic advantages.
And this is a game that we absolutely adore. It's particularly great because all of the actions are simultaneous. So you're all drafting a polyomino piece and placing it at the same time, which makes it a great game for bigger groups. But also this game is a little bit lighter, I would say. We still enjoy it very much, but it only gets to our table, generally speaking, when we have kind of a mixed group of maybe some newer gamers in the mix, which means that an expansion for us is probably less mandatory because we usually strip it right back every time we have newer gamers playing with us. The next one we want to talk about is Nucleum Australia. So obviously Nucleum was a game that made our best big box Euros of 2023. This is an expansion that introduces a new map, so a new board that is based in Australia. So of course we wanted to check that out. And it's essentially creating new routes. It introduces these new, what do they call, the shipping lanes? So it's on the water so that you can, if you're not familiar with Nucleum, you're trying to create a network, as it's a shared network, and you're trying to have access to electricity to power buildings. But also it features Tasmania on a little side map. And then there's something quite quirky about Hobart.
It's like a kind of mad scientist experiment sort of area, but then I think it's got its own, so I imagine it's probably going to be, it's got its own source of energy, like it's got its own, because they discovered,
special about
it's like
the
they discovered their own, the same innovation that the Nucleum, I can't remember what her name was, the woman who sort of did the incredible innovation that, this is a terrible explanation. There's something special about Tasmania. That's all you.
Well, generally speaking, it's a beautiful place. So,
it really is.
Hobart is the capital.
In real life, not in this alternative universe. In real life, it's a beautiful place.
But again, Nucleum is a game where there's so much complexity going on that it's like, I don't even think we're anywhere close to getting to expansion territory yet. But for lovers of the game, they'll probably enjoy that. And the final one is Heat Heavy Rain. So Heat was a very well-loved car racing game that came out in 2022 actually, but has been quite hard to find. And so it, is still on people's radars because a lot of people are just getting it to the table. We were actually one of those people that only got it to our table last year.
Yeah.
And this has been a real hit with especially, newer gamers. It's like got a cool deck building element where you're racing your cars around a track and then you're trying to manipulate how fast or slow you're going, because if you go too fast, you're attracting heat into your deck, which muddies up your deck and stops you from having more options for your movement. A very cool game. This expansion brings in 2 new maps. So the actual board has a Japanese racing track on it, and on the other side a Mexican racing track. 2 places that we absolutely adore. P.S. Japan and Mexico. But yeah, so it brings new maps. It also brings 1 new player. So interestingly, this
7th player.
The 7th player. So the base game and all the maps, you can tell that there's going to be 2 new cars. The base game has 6, but all the maps have starting places up to 8. For some reason, the first expansion has 1 new car and not 2, which suggests that a future expansion is going to have the 8th car. I kind of wish it had both cars, so immediately we could be sharing this game with 8 players, even with the base game. But, that wasn't to be. But this one brings in a lot of other little expansions as well. There's a particular submerging of cars. So when you go across parts of these racetracks that are submerged underwater, then it's much harder to change the speed that you're going at, or that attracts more heat. Which makes sense thematically.
Yeah, exactly.
So those 3 aren't on our list, but now let's get into what is on our list with our top 10.
Our number 10 is an expansion that I don't think many people know about because it hasn't been broadly publicized, but this is for the game Veiled Fate. Now, we don't usually like social deduction type games. I don't gel with those, but this was one that I actually really enjoyed my time with.
Yeah, me too.
It's all about your demigods and you're trying to control, essentially, like you're controlling all of these different demigods, but you're aligned with one in particular. And so you're wanting to make sure that you're kind of giving them more advantages and moving them along these tracks, because they're going to be kind of moving along this board and completing different objectives that get resolved based on like a voting kind of system. And so throughout the game, you're trying to obviously help the one that you're aligned with, but also kind of move the other ones along to throw off enough suspicion. There is quite a lot of like that table talk of going, oh, wait a second, what does this mean?
Yeah, if you're moving orange, you must be orange.
Yeah. But then there's also this sort of element on, I believe it's in the higher player counts, which is how we've mostly played it because it's where it kind of really shines, where multiple people are kind of like on the same team. Like we had like 2 people on the same team, but you don't know it. So you're also trying to deduce, wait a second, so who's actually, with me to try and kind of help them along so that you both can kind of sort of work together without overly working together.
Yeah, so that was really cool because the game we played had Maggie and I paired together. Yeah. And we had no idea at the start of the game. It was a big group of people. And then, slowly you're like, you just moved my piece forward. Yeah. That's very exciting. Anyway, this new expansion brings a whole host of new content. There's new role cards, there's new characters. But in particular, there's Hadria. And Hadria is an evil god that is being placed on the victory point track along with all of the demigods. And basically, actions that the players take are going to mean that Hadria moves forward or backwards. Now, at the end of the game, any demigods that are further ahead than Hadria are going to be eliminated. So, in other words, you can't win if your character ends up ahead of Hadria. And what I think is really interesting about that is it really changes your ability to hide behind why you're moving a demigod forward. So you're like, oh, I've moved orange forward. And people are like, oh, well, then you must be orange. You're like, no, I'm trying to make them fail by being ahead of Hadria. So it gives you this excuse. So I think it's really going to enrich the gameplay and make it a whole lot more interesting. So I'm excited to try that out. And that is our number 10. We don't know the name of it yet, but it is Veiled Fate and all of its many expansions that are coming soon. Now, our number 9 is a game called Decorum Moving Out. So this is an expansion for the base game Decorum, which is a cooperative game about passively aggressively trying to tell your partner that you're playing with or the people around the table what you want and don't want for the decoration of a house. I love this game. I love this game. It could be quite possibly my favorite cooperative game of all time.
Wow.
It is. I love it. It's a dream. You are not allowed to talk about the secret mission that you have on your card, which is to have a house decorated in a particular way. So maybe you need this style of lamp in that room, or you need to have the walls painted a certain color, but you're not allowed to tell your partner what your objective is, and you're trying to deduce what theirs is based on the decisions that you make changing the house, and then basically asking, how do you feel about that?
I was like, I'm not loving this. Or, I wouldn't really do it that way. Like you can't just be direct and say, hey, what about having this here? This doesn't work for me. So I think you just love being able to like role play
I really do. I mean, it's like, because I'm not passive aggressive in my real life at all, so I get to play out what that would be like.
Some people would like this. I don't think it's our vibe though. I don't think. So there's a lot of that.
So it's really fun. And actually, I thought it would just be fun because playing as a couple, like that kind of fun dynamic. But actually, I've played this with a lot of friends as well, and it always just ends up in it's just hilarious. Anyway, this expansion is all about moving out of your house. So moving day. I believe that moving house is one of the most stressful things that you could ever do. It's like up there with like getting divorced or like other horrible
often leads to divorce, I would imagine. It's
it's like one of those things where you need to pack everything out. Horrible. So in this particular expansion, apparently there's 20 new scenarios that are based on this idea of moving out, and it introduces concepts such as moving boxes, bubble wrap, and vehicles.
Yeah, putting things in cars, inside the car, on top of the car, and so that's a whole intriguing thing.
So I think you're trying
also what stays in the house or what while you're moving.
I think it's trying to decide as well, like what's precious enough to go in bubble wrap and all of those. Anyway, we're just guessing what the scenarios are going to be like, but I'm super excited to try this.
It should be a fun one.
It should be a really fun one. And that is our number 9, Decorum Moving Out. Now, our number 8.
Our number 8 is an expansion to a game that hasn't even come out yet. So it's like doubly anticipated. And this is Andromeda's Edge Escalation. So Andromeda's Edge being a spiritual follow-up to Dwellings of Eldervale. And it's very much very similar DNA, but very much sort of amped up and lots of new cool things added, and like a really cool worker retrieval engine really leveled up, and a lot of other things sort of streamlined. So we know that there's an escalation. The expansion has been announced for it, and I don't actually have a lot of information around it, but I know that it does introduce a 5th player, and it also brings in the solo mode, which I didn't get to play because it wasn't ready at the time that we actually were looking at the preview for it, at the prototype, and playing through the prototype. So it's a game that I actually, even though it's in space, I really, really enjoyed the engine building of it. So it'll be cool to see if the solo implementation helps to recreate that as well.
The only thing I'm intrigued by is how you fit a 5th person at the table, because thinking about when we had our 4-player games, there's the chaining of the cards.
You often end up with quite a long.
You end up with cards like, oh, sorry neighbor, like
if you specialize too much on one area. If you're pretty balanced, then you have a normal footprint of real estate.
I know, we have a fairly big gaming table, but all of these games that are coming out recently, it's like we need to get an even bigger table.
We have to just play on the floor and just have it. But that's our number 8, Andromeda's Edge Escalation.
Now, our number 7 is actually a smaller box game coming from All Play, and this game is called Panda Panda. It's very panda themed, as you can imagine. But this is actually a re-implementation or reskinning of a game called Cat Poker by Kaya Miyano and the illustrator Sai Beppu, which, if you are familiar with the kind of Japanese games, it's actually the same combo that designed and illustrated Nana. Now, Nana is definitely up there with one of our most played games over the last 12 months. Love this Japanese game. If you can get your hands on it, grab it. But All Play is doing a really great job of discovering these amazing Japanese games and localizing them, translating them, and sometimes giving them a different theme and like a refresh of their art. They've done that with Sail, with many other trick-taking games. But This one is a reskin of cat poker, and it's a very simple game. All you're doing is you are basically drawing a card and discarding a card on your turn, and the objective is to get all of the same card in your hand. But there's a couple little twists.
Yeah, if you discard an A card, then all players need to pass a card to a player on their left, which means that you might all of a sudden be interrupting or breaking up the beautiful kind of set that you were creating. So
Yes.
I think it's a game that's going to be incredibly accessible, very easy to teach and play with any group of gamers, non-gamers, anyone.
But the fun part is that you can actually draft from people's discard pile.
Yeah,
and
as
so
well, yeah.
so when you're discarding, you're not only thinking about like what card don't I need in my hand, but also what do I think everybody else is collecting? So once you can clock, oh, Maggie picked up that card, maybe that's what she's collecting. Maybe I don't want to discard another one of those. Or if someone's getting really close, you think, to finishing, you can play that A card and force them to pass a card. So I think it just sounds like really simple, and maybe it's more fun than it sounds when you describe it, like the sum of its parts.
Which I don't usually gel with, but Nana really surprised me because Nana's a very fun game, but it's still quite like, it's just, So
I love
same
that
designer, keen to check it out. So that's our number 7, Panda Panda. Our number 6 is a big box edition for Newsford, which is a game that we love and has been
so good,
so difficult to find recently. It's been out of print for a while, and it's one of those that you recommend and people are like, I can't find it. So great that we're getting a big box edition. It's going to have the base game, it's going to have all the different expansions, and it's going to bring in 2 new expansions. One is called Trout, and the other, I always forget how to pronounce the second one. Besokende? Is that I don't know. Yeah. Besokende is the other expansion, and essentially it's just bringing in more buildings. So Newsford is all about, it's like a fishing village, so you're going to be essentially creating or constructing buildings in the town, getting the support of different elders, and the currency, or a lot of the currency, or building fleet so that you can go out and do more fishing. And a lot of the currency is actually fish. Like you pay your elders in fish when if you can actually issue shares of your company, which can help with some cash. But then it means that then when you get fish, the people who buy your shares get fish.
Fish dividends,
Fish events, so it's a great worker placement game where you only really get to have a couple of actions sort of every turn, but it's so satisfying. So with the new expansions, essentially they have all these different the cards that are like different buildings that you get to construct in different stages. One of the things that is introducing, so obviously there's more of those, one of the buildings, the types of buildings that's introducing has visitors, so it's a new type of resource that's kind of like a visiting tourist meeple. That is another thing that you can kind of collect and interact with, but it also can help you with when it comes to paying costs. It acts as like, I think, 3 fish, or you can use it instead of 2 wood, or you can use it instead of a gold. So it becomes another, and it gives you points as well at the end of the game. So it's just another way of sort of mixing things up in a game that I absolutely love. It sort of gives you all of that satisfying Euro-y crunchiness and strategic sort of itch scratchiness, but in it actually plays fairly fast. Like we usually can play it within like 30 to 45 minutes.
Yeah, and it's great at 2 players as well.
Yes.
So if you're looking for a big box Euro that plays wonderfully at 2 players, this is a great one.
Yeah, so great that this is going to be back in circulation. That's our number 6, Newsford Big Box.
Now, our number 5 is a game we haven't talked about in a while. It's an expansion for Snowdonia called Snowdonia Grand Tour. Now, if you're not familiar with Snowdonia, we covered it in like year 1 of the channel. It's a terrible review.
We were such babies back then.
And we barely look at the camera. The audio is shocking. But my feeling about the game hasn't changed. The game is amazing.
Yeah.
I love this game. It's a worker placement game, but what you're doing is you're all working towards excavating and building a train track. And the way that you're going to do that is you need to like excavate to get rubble. You need to collect resources which you're going to then turn into pieces of track to help you build that. You're going to be building stations, and there's a very, very tense worker placement dynamic with other players in terms of the way that the actions play out and your ability to beat your opponents to be the first to be able to do the things that you need to do. So every time you excavate, there might only be a certain number of places where you can build track. You want to be able to beat your opponents to that spot if you've got track. So the thing I love about that game is that you're constantly having to pay attention to what your opponents are doing. So if I could see Maggie's got some track ready to go, maybe I'm not going to attempt to race her to do that and work on something else instead. There's also a cool weather mechanic that changes what you're able to do.
Very thematic as well, of the whole, like, you know, depending on the weather, how much you're going to be able to do on that turn or not in terms of the construction. Love that.
Yeah, and it also scales really well because of the way the worker placement spots are cards. Anyway, enough about the base game. What does World Tour bring? Well, interestingly...
Grand Tour.
Grand Tour.
I always think of it as like, it is a
bit of a world tour because essentially it's going to also bring in a campaign mode where you can follow along and you are going basically from famous train route to train route, building throughout this, I imagine, a light narrative story that introduces like the scenario, because this game is really all about different scenarios and how I love that it is really thematic with like how challenging it was originally to build that track. And we're not even trained people, but it is a wonderful game. This game also promises other more substantive game modes. So there's going to be some changes to the way the game plays, and also a new component. And they haven't told us what that new component is going to be. And I must say that as far as train games go, if you have played Ticket to Ride Legacy, you'll know that they kind of set the bar with a new component. I won't say what it is because it's a huge spoiler, but if you know, you know. And
that was excellent.
That was excellent.
That was such a like amazing.
I don't think it's going to be that, but I hope that there's a fun new component that changes the way the mechanics work, or you know, your objectives. So I'm excited about that. Also, if you've got the deluxe master set like we do, which is the big square box, you are going to be able to essentially back the components that can be added to that. So they're doing some fixes to the original scenario book as well, and you'll be able to basically it's going to be backwards compatible with all of that stuff. But if you are getting into the game for the first time, the box is going to be a new box, which apparently is a bit smaller than that deluxe master set, which is huge.
It was always a bit of an awkward one for shelving, sort of.
It is, but we love the game, so it gets pride and place on the shelf. So that is our number 5, Snowdonia Grand Tour. Now, our number 4 is actually the 4th edition of a game. I like that we did that.
That's very good. Alignment.
Our number 4 is Innovation Ultimate. Now, I haven't backed many games in the last 12 months, but this is one that I did back immediately. Innovation, in case you don't know, is a very small card game by Carl Chudik, which is absolute chaos. It is just the most chaotic game you could play. You're either going to absolutely love this game or hate it. But this is a big box. It's a little game in a big box with all of its expansions, because over the years there has been so many different expansions to this game. I have to say, we have the base card game and we've never played any of the expansions, but I love the opportunity, firstly, to be able to get everything in one. So this is going to organize all of the expansions. Apparently it fits them sleeved or unsleeved. And so it's all in one box. But they are doing more to it. So it is getting a bit of a glow up. They are changing the artwork on the back of the cards that are going to align it more with the feeling and style of the era that it belongs to, the age that it belongs to, which is cool. But they're also simplifying some of the graphic design on the other side as well. So people are probably going to be a bit polarized about this because this is a very well-loved game, but I believe they're just cleaning up some of the graphic design, but also some of the wording as well. So to make it clearer what you actually need to do, because in this game, there's a lot of different actions that can either impact you or everybody around the table. And so they're just cleaning up the language. So for example, I think instead of discarding cards, now it's called junk cards, to make it clear that they're out of the game.
Right.
So just like little things like that terminology, they're doing that. The other really cool thing that they're doing is this game is played over 10 ages, and you at the beginning of the game you set up the cards around in a circle, and kind of if you can get to the end of age 10, then the game ends. In this new edition, not only the base game, but every expansion is compatible with age 11. So they've added in an entirely new phase of the game. And that's because I think this game came out in 2010, like a long time ago. And so now there's 14 years have passed, and they've got this new age where they've actually a lot of technological development has happened since then, but also what we imagine now for the future is completely different too.
That's so cool.
Yeah, so they've added that in. And I just think what a great way to build on a game is to like modernize it and bring it into today's age.
They dialed it up to 11. They did it. They actually did it.
Yeah. So that is really cool. I'm super excited to get this and just explore more of the expansions. They've also added a new expansion called the Unseen. So if you've played Innovation before, there is sometimes the ability to destroy or steal achievements as you go. As I mentioned, it's a very chaotic game.
So annoying.
Yeah, it's so annoying.
Yeah.
But the whole game is annoying. So,
Yeah. It's part of it. Yeah, it's part of the experience.
Yeah. But you actually now have a safe to the side
I love
where
that.
you can sneak away your achievements. But then apparently there's all these like clandestine secrets that go along with that, and like little ways that you have like secret abilities and things like that being stashed away.
Sounds pretty wacky, and I love it. So I'm looking forward to that one.
Yeah, so that is our number 4, Innovation Ultimate.
And number 3 is an expansion to a game that I absolutely adore, and that is Obsession. So Obsession is all about this sort of Victorian era England, the town of Derbyshire, and it's all about your reputation of your family and marrying off your offspring to the Fairchilds, and you're kind of holding events and like all of that sort of stuff, and it leads to all sorts of like haughty, hilarious kind of role playing in the table. And so this expansion is going to bring in there's a characters expansion and also bringing in metal coins. Apparently the metal coins, Dan Halligan, the designer, is super proud of these. Like he's worked very, very hard on getting like the most satisfying, super chunky, super heavy coins that you can possibly get, which is cool. But the characters expansion is probably what I'm most intrigued about, because it's all about, usually in the base game you always have this you've got your deck and you're kind of playing the different events, and your deck is sort of like your guests, and you get to a point where you need to sort of pass and refresh that. In the previous expansions, they kind of added, like, that was a bit of a like sort of that nothing thing when you're kind of doing that passing and refreshing the deck. The upstairs downstairs added a bit more excitement to it, so I mean, you can now actually recruit servants at that point, or you could also like get money. Now it's bringing these characters that you can actually have pay a visit to, or have them visit you, and so it's introducing I'm gonna get the name wrong, but one is the Dowager Marchioness. I'll probably butcher that, but it's essentially this eccentric character that doesn't even have a meeple in the shape of a human, because she shan't be seen. So the meeple is her carriage. So you may admire the carriage, but not her directly. And she's got this collection of screen guests who are like these super eccentric individuals, and they have, so it's giving you an option of bringing in guests that can help you with either more reputation or some of the things that you may actually be lacking. But often there's a bit of a compromise. So sometimes it might be things that cost you money, or sometimes, so they're sort of like these sort of almost kind of like wild cards that you can bring in, but they have their quirks, so it's not going to be all just upside. That actually, so there's that character. Then there's also a reverend that you can have visit you to, essentially, if you ended up with goals, so some of the goals for the end of game that you're not going to be able to meet, It's the opportunity to go and talk to the reverend and go, I don't think the things that I set out for my life are going to happen. And so it gives you an opportunity to kind of refresh or get rid of some of the goals and get some new ones that might be more suitable for the end. But at the same time, those goals that you get rid of now are up for grabs for other players.
Oh, interesting.
So it's like, oh, you kind of have to obviously be paying attention. The other one is the constable. So the constable, you kind of going, constable, I've got a bit of a situation. The constable helps you get rid of any of your local guests that you want to dismiss from your hand. You're like, this is not really serving me. Just going, oh, I had no idea. And the constable just go, oh, but only the local guests. So, your American heiress, which is one of the ones that, like, one of the characters that are very well loved. She's not a local, so she's gonna stay in that deck. So that sort of brings in this new kind of worker placement. So it's worker placement in the sense that if I've used one of those for a round or so, like that spot is blocked, so other players can't use that if they pass. Okay. So yeah, I think that's going to add a lot more even more excitement and more things to do and more mitigation as well if things aren't kind of going your way, if you aren't getting quite the right combo of things that you want. So I'm super excited about that one. So that's Obsession. That is our number 3, the characters expansion and the metal coins.
Now our number 2 is another glow up. It is a remake of an older game. Not technically a game, actually. Threads of Fate is what it's called. It's by Post Curious, the narrative puzzle kind of company. And actually, this is technically a 2023 release, but it's only delivering just now. So I think it's scraping into 2024. And the reason why we wanted to include it is because we genuinely super excited because we have been low-key obsessed with Rita Orlov's work, which are these puzzles that are super aesthetic. They have this really strong narrative.
Yeah, they're so creative as well. Like, they're not like most of your escape room in a box. It's like, this is just like really interesting ways of cracking something and seeing something.
And they're hard, like super hard.
They're challenging,
but not in a way that's like, you finally worked it out. You're like, well, that was silly. It's no, I was silly because I didn't think of that, and we just sit there for maybe an hour trying to crack a puzzle.
Yeah.
And I think at the read, I was like reflecting on why I love these experiences so much. It's actually a really nice counterpoint to the amount of board games that we play, because when you turn up for one of these experiences in a box, you don't need to have any prior knowledge about the rule set. There's nothing to learn. You just open up whatever it is, the envelope for the next episode, and it just feels like a clean slate where the puzzle is going to be presented to you, and then it's up to you to figure it out. So it's actually really nice when we don't feel like absorbing more rules, because we learn so many games a year.
There's no initial overhead investment. It's like, as soon as you just pull it out there, you read the bit of usually like a little bit of intro story, and then away you go.
Away you go. And it's so satisfying when you finally crack it. But anyway, let's get back to Threads of Fate. Threads of Fate is actually a remake of the game that started the company, which was called The Tale of Ord. And so basically, that original game was handmade. Every copy was handmade, and that is not really sustainable. But also,
from a business point of view,
but it also means that the game is not accessible to the masses. And now that the company's taken off, they've learned a lot about puzzles and how to make them easy for people to get into. And so they have made a few tweaks and changes, I believe, to some of the puzzles, maybe even to the story, I'm not sure. But they've also changed it for mass production so that more people can get their hands on the copies of this game. So we are really excited to get a copy of Threads of Fate to play through this. But yeah, basically the story, I haven't even mentioned what the story is about, but I believe you're playing as private investigators, and you're trying to look for some missing professors, but then you stumble upon some kind of mysterious
codes and things that like
what's it called? No, like a relic or an amulet.
That's right.
So you discover something that has some kind of secret powers, and that's kind of the intro to the story. But anyway, that is our number 2 Threads of Fate.
And our number 1 is another glow up, and that is Kalamala 2nd Edition. So this is a game by Fabio Lopiano, who also did Autobahn, and it's had the Ian O'Toole art treatment, so it's just sort of immediately been sort of elevated aesthetically. This is a game that we actually got to play at Essenspiel. with the designer as
Fabio
well. Fabio taught us.
Amazing.
Yes. He was trying his best to do a bit of coaching, but I still lost horribly to that. And it's all about medieval Florence, and you are wool cloth trades, like merchants, I guess is the word for it. And so it was a time where these, like, if you were part of this group, you were probably some of the most powerful people, because that's where the incredible trade and all of the money was sort of coming through. And you also had a big part in developing the aesthetically, the architecture and the things that kind of got built around Florence at the time. So it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and if the artwork isn't enough to draw you in, because Tool has done a fabulous job, the game itself is just something that we had never played the original.
No.
And mechanically, this game is so interesting because right from the beginning of the game, it lays out exactly what is going to score and when. So it shows you the sequence of the parts of the board that are going to score. And so it's up to you whether you start to build up your presence in the area that's going to score next, or maybe you are looking down the track a little bit further and so you're trying to, you're like, oh, I've given up on that, I've got no hope winning over there, so I'm going to look at maybe the next thing that's going to score. But the game is played out in a really interesting way because you are placing tokens between two action spaces, and you get to take both actions that are adjacent to your player piece. So there's this little puzzle where you're placing out your little token workers and being able to activate those actions, but also you're creating a little stack of workers, and every time the fourth worker is placed, it triggers the next scoring condition. So not only are you thinking about where do I want to go in order to take the action that I want to take, but also what is the timing of that? If I activate the next scoring now, I'm guaranteed to lose. So maybe I want to hold that off for as long as possible so I can build up more presence in that area.
There's also a lot of really positive player interaction because that stack is multiple players. So every time you play an action on top of a stack, anyone else who's in that stack will also get to kind of reactivate one of those actions. And if you happen to be the person at the bottom when it reaches that scoring thing, that one of your characters goes into the, I think it's called the council area, which is its own kind of area majority mini game as well.
Yeah, so there's so much to think about, and that positive player interaction actually means that maybe you don't want to go to that spot because that person's going to benefit and they're already, they have the lead. But I just love this idea of open information about what's going to score and when. But then there's a lot of hidden information as well in the form of these cards that you're able to play in order to manipulate what you're able to get done on your turn, generally speaking. Everyone also has a secret objective, which is that one of the areas is going to score twice, is going to score again, but you don't know what other people have until you notice that they're actually building on an area that has already scored. So why would they be doing that unless they have that?
They seem to be investing very heavily.
So maybe I want to get back in on that area. So just like fascinating game, really high interaction, but still with that really beautiful Euro strategic feel to it. I was like, where has this game been all my life?
This was a real surprise.
A real surprise. And because of that, it is number one on our list for games that we absolutely want to get our hands on this year. But technically not a new game, but a game that's been hidden away from us. So that is our number one, which is Kalamala. So we hope you enjoyed this list. Obviously, there are so many expansions that come out where typically we don't buy a lot of expansions, so that's why we had a joint list for this. But we hope that there was something in there that you didn't know about already that now you're very excited about for 2024. Thank you so much for watching our videos. If you liked this video, please remember to hit like, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and we'll be back with more board game content soon. But otherwise, bye for now.
Bye.